اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري أنه قال عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة، فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا، فقلت له أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به، فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه، فقلت عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدة يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. وقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدة، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ وقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي، وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. ولما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنيا ولا أرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيعا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبتي هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على. فقال جبريل: يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبريل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يسري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم. وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم، قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. وقال علي إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. وقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. الفاتحة.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله. هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سميع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها بعدد ما أحاط به علمه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سميع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. سميع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. يا من له الدنيا والآخرة ارحم من ليس له الدنيا والآخرة بجاه محمد وعطرته الطاهرة. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على اللهم صل على محمد وعجل فرجه. لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع على من حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع على من حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله ربي. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع على لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. والله أكبر. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. سمع له لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. إلهي عظم الذنب من عبدك فليحسن العفو من عندك يا كريم. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. لا إله إلا الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه.
خوشنودی مولا کائنات بآواز بلند صلوات. وہ کیا فاطمی ہے، وہ کیا ماتمی ہے، جو مولا علی کی ولا چھوڑتا ہے. وہ کیا فاطمی ہے، وہ کیا ماتمی ہے، جو مولا علی کی ولا چھوڑتا ہے. نہیں بات میری حدیث نبی ہے، علی کو فقط بے حیا چھوڑتا ہے. بغض میں خدا سے مدد مانگتے ہو، تم مجرم ہو وعدت کے گھر جھانکتے ہو. بغض میں خدا سے مدد مانگتے ہو، تم مجرم ہو وعدت کے گھر جھانکتے ہو. مدد جو علی سے، مدد جو علی سے نہیں مانگتا ہے، اسے بے سہارا خدا چھوڑتا ہے. ولایت ادھوری، شرافت ادھوری، علی کے بنا ہے عبادت ادھوری. ابھی مانگ لو تم ولایت سے معافی، علی تو بقا در کھلا چھوڑتا ہے. نہیں بات میری حدیث نبی ہے، علی کو فقط بے حیا چھوڑتا ہے. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. یا فاطمہ یا فاطمہ یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا،
یا فاطمہ زہرا.
چھروا دو ہمیں غم سے یہی وقت کرم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے. چھروا دو ہمیں غم سے یہی وقت کرم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے. یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا.
اولاد کی نعمت سے ہے محروم جو مائیں، بے شیر کے چولہے پہ وہ کرتی ہے دعائیں. امید کرم آپ کا ہی باب کرم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے.
یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا.
ہر رنج و بلا دور رہے ہے یہی فریاد، شبیر کے ماتم کے لیے وہ رہے آباد. عباس علمدار کا جس گھر پہ علم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے. یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا.
رضوان و ملائک ہے پلے آپ کے در سے، کیوں بندہ مومن بھلا پھر رزق کو ترسے. حاتم کا نہیں یہ تو در شاہ امم ہے،
یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے.
یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا. سجاد کے صدقے اسے آزاد کرا دیں، صغرا کے تصدق اسے اپنوں سے ملا دیں. مومن جو کوئی قید میں بے جرم و ستم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا،
یا فاطمہ زہرا،
دینا ہے مجھے آپ کو شبیر کا پرسا، بی بی مجھے جلدی سے بلا لیجے مدینہ، سانسیں یہ بتاتی ہیں کہ اب وقت بھی کم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا،
خوشیوں کی طلب آپ سے کی ہے نہ کریں گے، ہمیں آپ کی مرضی پہ رضامند رہیں گے، درکار ہمیں آپ سے شبیر کا غم ہے،
یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا،
یا فاطمہ زہرا،
مہدی سے لحد آپ کی دیکھی نہیں جاتی، اب پردہ غیبت سے انہیں بھیج دو بی بی، یہ میری دعاؤں میں دعا سب سے اہم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے، چھڑوا دو ہمیں غم سے یہی وقت کرم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے، یا فاطمہ زہرا تمہیں بچوں کی قسم ہے۔
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
Sayyid Hassan Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jami wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this auspicious occasion of Eid-e-Mubahila, for the love of our holy Prophet and his pure progeny, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin, Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Wi-Fi Mariz is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah, let us now invite Sayyid Hassan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's majlis. Wa Muhammad wa Muhammad salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة بعد الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this month of Dhul Hijjah, we have some commemorations which are shared amongst everyone. And then, as we've just celebrated and commemorated last week, we also have Eids that we as Shias and followers of the Ahlul Bayt hold in a regard that no other Muslim does. And it's a specific Eid for the Shias. So last week, of course, was Eid al-Ghadir, Eid al-Akbar. And tonight, we are celebrating, of course, Eid-e-Mubahila on the 24th of Dhul Hijjah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. I think most of us know the general points of the story. I don't want to go through the whole point again. What I figured is to maybe see how we might be able to connect it to Muharram. And I know it might be a strange thing to take an Eid and connect it to Karbala. But it's because of the events that recently have transpired, for those of you who are aware of all these different issues in the Shia world. And because the same types of issues always end up creeping up every year. Right? We know Ramadan, the moon stuff happens every time. But right around Muharram as well is when the same issues come up about Karbala, Muharram, and specifically among Shias, this idea of Ziyara Ashura and the idea of La'na. And this is continuously an issue for people. So much so that some have felt that they have to write whole articles trying to refute the authenticity, to try to say that this goes against the message of the Ahlul Bayt, these sort of ideas. And what we want to offer for all of you tonight is that there's many different ways you can prove these ideas. The permissibility and the recommendation of la'na in Islam, for example, the status of the Ahlul Bayt, proving the wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. But what I wanted to do is actually take a page out of George Lucas's book. George Lucas being the famous writer and director of the Star Wars movies, right? So for those of you who are Star Wars fans, you know that Lucas has been quoted to say that in Star Wars, the way that you can tell the movies make sense is because they're like poetry. So like they rhyme. So all the movies, whether it's 1, 2, 3, and then the original sort of 4, 5, 6, they all have the sort of same theme behind them. And this is why you see most people who are real diehard fans, like myself, when 7, 8, and 9 came out, like these new ones, they were like, yeah, this is garbage, this is trash, it makes no sense, because it didn't have that same rhyming scheme. It didn't follow that poetry that George Lucas had written and envisioned. And you can say the same thing too. For those of you who are also Ahl Shi'r or Sha'air, if you are somebody who's into poetry and you know your poets well, when you look at lines of poetry, if somebody were to try to sneak in some idea, you'd be able to tell. Say, look, this is not from Mir Anis, this is not from Iqbal, this is not from Hafiz. We know, being somebody who reads him constantly, I know what he sounds like. This is not a line from him. This is out of place. And this is also the principle that many of our scholars use when they evaluate a hadith and traditions and ziyarat and du'as as well, right? They'll say, look, we know how the Imam speaks. Du'a Kumail is the language of the Imam. Du'a Sabah is the language of the Imam. Sahifa Sajadiyah, that's the language in the way that our Imam spoke. When you look at some of these other ziyarat or du'as, that's where some ulama say, look, this language doesn't seem like the language of the Ahlul Bayt. It doesn't seem like the language of somebody who has real ma'rifah of Allah, right? It seems like it's immature, right? It's very superficial. So maybe some scholar, some Sufi wrote it, and it got turned into a du'a over time. So this idea where naturally when we become not even experts, but we're well acquainted with the subject, we can tell when puzzle pieces are supposed to fit together, how things are supposed to rhyme and when a pattern is formed. So all these questions, if you look in the Quran, if you look in the Seerah of the Ahlul Bayt, all of these things together, without just taking one random incident here, the Prophet said this, Imam Ali said this, I think that's unnecessary. If you look at this big picture, you'll see that every single incident rhymes. Throughout the Quran, throughout the life of the Prophet, throughout the life of the Imams, all of their life incidents, everything that happened, whether good or bad, their responses to all of these things. Everything rhymes. Everything's like poetry. So I want to give that example and connect this idea of Mubahila and Muharram, or rather in Karbala, if you can recite a Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, the quick reminder of history first. So we know Mubahila happens in 9th year of Hijri or Hijrah. At this point, Rasulullah had been calling and writing different letters to various empires and kings, different tribal leaders, inviting them towards Islam. One of those places happened to be within Najran, right? And it was a famously Christian area. And according to many historians, it was one of the only Christian strongholds left in the Arabian Peninsula. There weren't too many places like this. So the Christians were strong in Najran. So Rasulullah directly writes a letter and sends it with an ambassador of his and sends it to the Archbishop or the Grand Bishop of Najran, who's Abu Harith. So the letter comes, and the letter, again, I'm not going to go through the whole content, but basically, the main point is that Rasulullah tells this Archbishop that, look, I'm inviting you to leave the ibadat and the worship of makhluk. I'm inviting you away from worshiping the creations of Allah, and rather you should be worshiping Allah Himself. Right? So don't worship Isa and Jesus, worship Allah instead. He said, if you refuse, then you'll have to pay jizya, right? This tax, and with that jizya comes the protection of the Muslim empire. If you refuse that as well, then there'll be severe consequences, meaning that we will go to war with you. So this is it, simple options. And again, there's many ayat related there because I think we've gone through these in the previous years on Mubahila. I'm not going to go through them again. We know when this letter comes, there's a discussion among the Christians of Najran. Even the Archbishop is confused. What do I do? Some people there are saying, look, this seems like the way that the prophet that we have been waiting, the prophet that we knew was going to come later, this seems like he would speak. This seems like how he would act. So it might be in our best interest to go and at least send a delegation to respond. Right? So they say, okay, send this delegation. And according to most historians, this Archbishop, this Grand Bishop is a part of it too. And there's some say that there's 14 of their most elite scholars and individuals, and there's other people that were with them as well. They come to meet the Prophet in Medina, and they say at this point they were wearing this fancy Yemeni silk. They were embroidered in gold and had this gold jewelry as well. And there, according to some riwayat, Rasulullah didn't like their appearance, and he actually sent them away, according to some narrations. And when they tried to figure out, why is Muhammad so upset with us? So they asked some of the other companions. They said, look, we have no idea. The only one who can explain this to you is Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So when they come to Imam Ali, he says, the reason that Rasulullah disliked and sent you away initially is because your appearance was not one that was humble. He said you came in dressed in silk and these fancy clothes, you came dressed in gold. Like, this is not the proper appearance for religious people, religious scholars. And something unfortunate which continues to this day, right? So he said, come in more humble clothes. So they change their clothes and then they come in. And apparently, there's different versions of it. They came in, it actually came time for them to pray, like their version of Christian prayers at that point, because they had, again, the Christian prayer has changed over time, right? They actually had a timed canonical ritual prayer at that point as well. I mean, what sect existed in Najran? Again, that's up for debate and research as well. So the time came, so apparently one of the scholars, the Christian scholars, had a bell in his hand. So he began ringing this bell to let everybody know, hey, it's our Christian time to pray. And they began praying. So some of the companions, as we know, a lot of them were hotheads, right? So they grabbed their swords, they're like, Rasulullah, let us, they're showing disrespect. Let's stop them. They're praying in a masjid. He said, no, it's okay, leave them be. Right? He said, fine. So they pray. Then the conversation begins. So again, he invites Islam. There's, again, different versions here. I'm only going through some of the more famous ones. They said, what's the big deal? I'm paraphrasing here. We submit as well. Some versions, they were saying, hey, we're Muslims too. We submit to God just like you. Well, why are you bothering us? He said, no. There's definitely things about you which go against the fact that you could submit to God. Like, well, tell us, what is it then? What's the problem? He says, well, number one, you have this worship of the cross. He's like, that can't happen. He said, number two, you're drinking alcohol. So that also can't happen. And number three, you're eating pork. He says, this is not something that somebody who submits to Allah or submits to God would do. None of these things. And some other letters, they talk about the idea of riba and interest. He said, even this shouldn't be happening as well. Okay. So they say, again, they're trying to, argue and debate. Say, look, it's not a big deal, just leave us. He said, no, accept Islam. Then the same thing in the letter stands. Accept Islam, pay a jizya, or we go to war. These are the three options. So he said, no, we accept Nabi Isa as being the son of God, meaning he is godly, and then the debate begins. And this is, of course, when the famous ayat is revealed, Inna mathala Isa and Allah ka mathala Adam. Right? When the Christians start saying, look, we believe that Jesus is God because he has no father. So Allah reveals to Jibreel, to reveal to Rasulullah, that look, if this is their rationale, if they're not going to follow all the other themes, use their own logic against them. If your logic, the Christian logic at that point, was that, Isa did not have a father, that makes him divine. Said, okay, well then God's saying respond to them with their own broken logic, that's fine. If not having a parent makes you divine, and makes you godly, then obviously Nabi Adam's going to be greater because he doesn't have a mom or dad. And then technically we could even add that even further and say, no, Bibi Hawa, she should be divine as well too, right? Because she didn't have a mom or dad as well. So this logic happens, and at the end they say, look, we don't accept. We're not satisfied with this answer. So now, divine scripture has been revealed. The puzzle pieces, the patterns have all been given to them. They've seen the signs. Even using rational logic is not working on them. Said, okay, fine. If that's the case, then finally, then the call is made, and Rasulullah says, look, if you're not going to accept any of this, then the only other way we can handle this is if we do Mubahila. Mubahila, meaning that you and I, we go and we both pray to Allah to curse the one who is lying, to damn the person who is lying, to have the withdrawal of mercy happen upon the other individuals. This is a serious thing, right? This is not a game. This is a big deal here. And this is where I now want to open up the conversation a little bit. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Last week we were talking about how Ghadir, a lot of people bring it up in terms of intra-faith, that, it's, something common between Sunnis and Shias, right? Oh, we both love Imam Ali. I said, no, Ghadir is not about Imam Ali being a friend. He's about, it's about Imam Ali being a wali, an imam, right? So don't water down these events in history. The same way, sometimes people take events in the history of Islam and use them for this interfaith bridging, right? Intra-faith is when you do like Sunni Shia or various sects of Islam. Interfaith is outside of Islam, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Scientologists, I don't know, whoever you want to call it nowadays. So when this stuff happens, we have to have an honest and real picture of history, of what the Sira of the Ahlul Bayt is, specifically the Sira of Rasulullah. And a lot of us have, Rasulullah, peace and love and all this. So, okay, fine, that's there. But how now do you explain an event like Mubahila? Again, let's go back. The first thing that's happening is that the Prophet is sending out letters, specifically to these Christians, saying you need to become Muslims. He's telling them to convert. Has it ever happened in an interfaith dialogue that you've been a part of where they say, we want you to convert to Islam? Or is it, no, let's just sit down and let's just talk about how, you believe in God, I believe in God too. Oh, you're loving, we're loving too. You want to be nice? We want to be nice too. You like charity? We like charity too. Like, that's all it ends up being. What's the point of that? I don't think we need to hold hands and say that. What's the value of an event like that? I don't know. And it's funny because anybody who's been a part, if you actually examine and pay attention to the words of everybody else who's there,
the people of the other faiths, especially Christians, they will be pushing down their ideology every single sentence they can. But it's only Muslims, especially Shia Muslims, who withdraw and withdraw and withdraw and say, well, I can't force my ideas on anybody. I don't know where this idea comes from. Rasulullah is inviting them, saying, look, you need to convert. If you don't convert, then fine, you can remain a Christian, no problem, but you have to pay the jizya, you have to pay this tax. Right? It's a simple thing. The Islamic Empire, you get protection. There's benefits from that, but you're going to have to pay. If you don't want to accept the truth, that's fine. God has given a special exception to your faith, your Ahlul Kitab. You can remain on a deficient form of truth, that's okay, but you're just going to have to pay, and we'll protect you for it too. Again, this doesn't really seem like very interfaithy stuff here, right? And then finally, the worst part of it, the best part or worst part, however you look at it, if you don't want to become Muslim, and you don't want to pay, well then, Rasulullah is saying, we're going to go to war. Well, what happened to all this stuff that now Muslims are like, oh, we don't force our ideas on anybody, Islam is peace and love, and we don't spread this. No, look, I'm not arguing for some Daeshi, Al-Qaeda, Taliban stuff. That's not what I'm talking about here, obviously, in case I need to make that disclaimer. This is obviously in the hands of Rasulullah and the expansion of the Islamic Empire. But the point of it is to understand our history, that this was the expansion of truth. Truth doesn't just sit around silently. Truth is not just sitting on pause, waiting and waiting. And we have to reflect on when we're around other people, do we just sit and say, look, I can't force my ideas on anybody, I can't talk about being a Muslim and God and all this, let's just talk about what we have in common? No, Rasulullah is like, no, we're not talking about that. What you're saying we have in common, even that I disagree with. And we have to go beyond that. Islam is haqq, and I need to explain that to you. And if you don't accept, then there will be consequences. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In this conversation that Rasulullah is having with the Christians, again, this is not an interfaith dialogue here. Rasulullah is debating them. He's having a debate saying, no, I don't agree with what you're saying. Your conception of Isa is incorrect. Your conception of religion is incorrect. Your actions are incorrect. You should not be drinking. You should not be eating pork. You should not be worshiping the cross as you do. This is not correct. He's calling it out as it is. Right? He's proving the truth of Islam and the falsehood of Christianity. Right, to their faces, to the grand bishops, the archbishop there. And then after this show of stubbornness, after they say, look, we're not satisfied, even when their own logic is used against them, they said, no, we're not satisfied. I said, okay, fine. If somebody fails to act according to reason, then Rasulullah, through the command of Allah, says, fine, this is now when we have the right to say, we want Allah to withdraw mercy from you. Because you've damned yourself. If you won't listen and follow the rhyming scheme that Allah has given you, if you're not paying attention to the ayat and the signs, if you won't even use your aql and your reason, then what hope is there for you? So Rasulullah then is saying, fine, I'll have no problem coming out, and particularly with my family, my closest members of my family, to pray that Allah curses the liars, the kadhibin. He's challenging them to Allah in a battle. That's what he's doing, right? This is a lot different than the kind of nice, rosy, hippie picture that we get of Islam. How do you argue with a historical event like this? I mean, again, for all these liberal Muslims, how do they explain an event like this? Just like Ghadir, Mubahila is a completely undeniable event in Islamic history. No Orientalist, no Muslim can deny it. And especially the other Muslims, they will never ever deny that there were only 5 people present that day. Muhammad al-Mustafa, Ali al-Murtada, Fatima al-Zahra, and Sayyid Shabab, Ahlul Jannah, Hassan and Hussein, alayhim salatu wassalam. There's absolutely no other narration or historical evidence that says there is somebody else there. And apparently, even some have tried to say, oh, other companions gathered while Rasulullah was leaving. He stopped them outside, right, in Medina. He said, no, only these 4 are coming with me. It's only us 5 who are going. That's it. So he told them, stay over here. This is not for you. Okay, right? It's okay to be exclusionary sometimes. When people can't handle things, it's okay to exclude them. Not everybody has to be involved in everything all the time, right? You can exclude some people. Some people are not privy to some information because it might be damning, might be harmful, right? They have this famous incident where once Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen were in a tent. And whenever Rasulullah and Imam Ali were together, this is when these special secrets were being discussed that no one else was privy to, right? It was Rasulullah giving Imam Ali these divine secrets. They say one time, while they're in this tent, a certain companion is walking by and he hears them speaking. He says, oh, I want to hear what's going on there. It sounds like a nice conversation. So as Rasulullah hears the footsteps, then his voice begins to lower a little bit. And as he hears the footsteps getting closer, then it becomes very quiet. When this companion opens the flaps and folds of the tent, then Rasulullah stops speaking altogether. So the companion is like shocked, said, Ya Rasulullah, please don't stop on my account, continue, go ahead, keep saying what you're saying so that I might benefit. And Rasulullah just says one thing and ends. He says, honey is harmful for newborn infants. That's it. And if you understand, then you understand. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So it's not necessary that everybody is a part of everything all the time. Not everybody deserves all this knowledge and all this information all the time. We're all at different levels. We're all at different types of strengths in our aql, in our consciousness and awareness. So people handle different things. Now, the final connection. How is Mubahala actually connected to Muharram and Karbala? So, one is in the very simple fact that when people are firmly established on the truth, and you want to test their certainty, the greatest way to test it is to see whether they're willing to put their family at risk as well. And this is what the Christians saw too. The Christians, when they were waiting for Rasulullah, they said, when they were coming, before, as they were, kind of having their little, huddle, I guess, one of them said, look, if Muhammad comes by himself, or he just brings some warriors or things like that, then we'll know that, he's probably playing some games, he's a false prophet. But if he brings his family, if he brings people who are close to him, then that must mean he's a prophet. Because nobody else would want to, even for one small chance, possibly invite the curse and wrath of Allah on their family. Like nobody would do that. And you see the same thing. If Imam Hussein does not believe he's on haqq, then why is he taking his 6-month-old child? Why is he taking his sister? Why is he taking his brother? Why is he taking all these women and children with him? The only way you would do that is if you believe you're on haqq. So this is the sort of first connection, is when you're on the truth, and that's for all of us too, then we should be willing and we should have and make sure our families are together with us. And this is what we mean when we're trying to manifest the qualities of the Ahlul Bayt. Before we start going out and trying to save the world, let's make sure we save our families first, right? Our families need to be role models and follow the examples of the Ahlul Bayt. Our wives need to be on board with what we're saying. Our husbands need to be in the same page as how we're thinking. Our children need to be raised with the principles of the Ahlul Bayt. That's how we raise an Islamic household. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And the final point is this. Just like those Christians, after denying the truth, after rejecting the truth, then through divine intervention and divine inspiration and wahi, Allah tells Rasulullah that now it's okay, go ahead, mubahala. Go ahead and use la'an on them. You can go and pray against them. When opponents of God's truth reach a certain stage, when they really become a'da and udu, dushmanan Islam, dushmanan Ahlul Bayt, then Allah says, yeah, they deserve your wrath. They deserve my wrath and my anger and my la'na. What's wrong with that? So now we're taking it to Karbala. When people say, this is not like my Imam would never speak in this language and curse other people and this and that. Say, look, didn't your prophet specifically curse people of another faith? And he was stopped. It was about to happen. It was the Christians who stopped him from doing so. So if the enemies of Islam, in Quranic history, this is not some da'if, weak hadith that we're bringing up. This is Quran. The Quran is saying, go ahead, when somebody comes to you and they challenge you, when they are disputing the truth with you, then go ahead. Get your nafs, get your women, get your children, and call, and you can use la'ana on them. That's no problem. I'm not telling you to go and do that with your opponents, right? Because every little argument you might have with somebody, I don't want you to go and use la'ana on them. That's the point, right? But the point is that, why would somebody who knows the rhyming scheme of the Quran, who knows the pattern of the seerah of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, whenever they were confronting the most vile and vicious enemies, people who were stubborn to the truth, that Allah said, there's nothing wrong with doing la'na on them. In fact, Allah would command them and say, yes, do la'na on them. So when we see something like Ziyara Ashura, why are we so surprised that, yes, there are some people who are deserving of la'na? Because they have become so depraved, so disgusting, so vile and evil, that they would go and fight the child, the son, the nafs of Rasulullah. Why would they do something like that? So what is so incredibly tough to understand and envision and imagine that in Islam, amongst the Ahlul Bayt, that there is this idea of la'na. When somebody reaches that lower level, that's what they do deserve. So we shouldn't be so surprised there. So when they bring up these arguments that this is not the style of the Ahlul Bayt, we say, look, if that's what you really believe, then guess what? If you want to dispute with us about the nature of Ziyarah Ashura or La'an, no problem. We will call on our side Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein. You can call whoever you want on your side. On our side, we have the people who are Ahlul La'na, who are Ahlul Mubahila. Who's the people on your side? Which scholars, which people in history are the ones who are saying, no La'na? And then you'll see which side you actually belong on. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let's move on to our quiz for tonight. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, so an Eid Mubarak to everybody, to SD, Fatima 11. Allahumma la'an, very nice. Technically, you should have an extra M in your Allahumma, by the way. God-centric, Jabir, Diuji, calm down, specialists, SMS, Qambar, Janu, SY or Sai, I don't know, chill like that, Hassan with 2 S's, Mubahila, Khurasani, Alia L, pay the tax, Tawheedi, Anonymous, Ya Ali, what else we have? We have Ali, we have a lot of people tonight, mashallah. Good. Zahra Ali, RMJ, Muhammad Abbas, the Yusuf Alis, Mahmoud, MPSS, SSPM, Obese Jaguar, what? Oh man, Material Girl? What is that supposed to be? I don't know. All right, some of you need to, calm down with your names. All right, this is a family-friendly event. Okay, so please go and change your names. All right. Okay, let's get started, inshallah. Which of the following spellings are correct? Mubahila, Mubahala, both are correct or neither are correct? Does the ha have a kasra or a fatha, or are both okay? Let me remind you that the notes and the newsletter are not hujjah on anybody, by the way. Okay, good. So most of you knew that it's Mubahala, not Mubahila. Different meaning, but Mubahala is the correct one. Najran is a city in Hijjaz that is near the border of what? Iraq, Iran, Yemen, or Africa? Where is Najran? Or where is it near? Near the border of what area? MashaAllah, most of you got that. 78% of you got it. It is Yemen. Okay. The event of Mubahala took place during which period of Rasulullah's life? The beginning, the Meccan period, the middle, after Hijrah, or the end, close to his death, or it's unknown. And yeah. When did it actually happen? I mean, the clue would have been that this took place basically in Medina, right? So yeah, this was close to his death, towards the end of his life, only a few years before. Okay, number 4. Where is the event of Mubahala mentioned in the Quran? Is it 361, 567, 1414, or 3333? What is the surah and ayah? So it is Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 61. And we got an extra one for tonight as well, because it's for Ahlul Qisa. The Panjitan might as well have 5 questions, right? What is the ruling on clapping? Is it always haram, always allowed, only allowed for nasheeds, or only allowed if you have rhythm? What is the ruling on clapping? According to Ayatollah Sistani, of course. So I'm surprised the majority of you did get it right. It is always allowed. Although I wish the answer was only allowed if you have rhythm, but okay. Because when people clap off rhythm or they're doing matam, it throws everything off. So, in addition to other things, I think we need to have like a rhythm class or something like that, inshallah. Okay. Asant I wish you spelled it right, but Mubahila, 5 out of 5, 43 seconds. Asant. Oh, most of you got a 5 out of 5. Good job. So specialists, calm down, Yusuf Ali's anonymous. All of you 5 out of 5. It's only actually a few seconds. So all of you are 2 seconds behind pretty much. And then Yusuf Ali's and anonymous tied for 4th place. Wow, good one tonight. MashaAllah. Okay. So Eid Mubarak once again to all of you. For those of you who will come to Fajr tomorrow, we'll see you all at 6 a.m. And then don't forget that we have our final Thursday program before the Ashra of Muharram begins. And this final Thursday program will be our interactive session that we've been having almost monthly. So again, both men and women will be in the main hall. And again, we'll be summarizing this series that we've been doing of God centricity versus egocentricity. So for those of you who have questions, who have comments and objections, whatever, now or Thursday is the time to bring them. Because afterwards, I'm not going to talk about it ever again. We're going to be done with that. Hopefully, we'll wrap that up in a few minutes. And then afterwards, we can just open it up to general Q&A about any of the topics that have been addressed or anything else that's on your mind. Inshallah, we can open it up for discussion. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahl baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Just to correct Sayyid Hassan's statement, Fajr on Sunday morning. There's still Fajr tomorrow. Yeah, well, yeah, but here, Fajr Sunday morning. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
رب جانتے حسین جانے
رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے دیکھ تو اے واسطہ مانگ لے دعا رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے میرے نصیباں وچ لکھ نہیں اولادے کیتی حسین میری جھولی آبادے میرے نصیباں وچ لکھ دی اولادے کی تھی حسین میری جھولی آبادے ست پتر دے کے گیا راہب تجھا رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین سب مل کے جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے
اتنی نماز پر ہونا بے چین جتنی پڑھاوے اج تینو حسین
اتنی نمازیں پڑھو ہونا بے چین جتنی پڑھائے تینو آج حسین مصطفیٰ سجدہ ودا کہندا خدا رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے رب جانتے حسین جانے
محمد وآل محمد صلوات
اللہ محمد وآل محمد.
اس کی نسل میں غیرت رہے گی جس نے کہا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین
سب مل کے
میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین. اس کی نسل میں غیرت رہے گی جس نے کہا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین.
کس نور کی آمد ہوئی سجدے میں ہے فاطمہ
ہر دور کا یزید کا ہونے لگا خاتمہ کرب و بلا سے آواز آئی لو آ گیا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین.
سب مل کے اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد.
میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین.
مصروف ہوں غرور میں اب کوئی بھی ڈر نہیں
فطر اس کا تو سردار ہے اڑنے میں ہم سر نہیں
جبریل دیکھو میرے پروں پر اب ہے لکھا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین. سب مل کے میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین. تقدیر نے کروٹ ہے لی بس ایک ہی رات میں
ایمان کا سورج تلو پھر ہو گیا ذات میں
خیمے کے در پر سر کو جھکا کر حر نے کہا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین. جیو جیو جیو. وہ ہاتھ تو جہان میں پھر نہ بھکاری ہوا
اس ہاتھ پہ حلال کا اب رزق طاری ہوا
سینے کے اوپر جو ہاتھ سن لو کہ لگایا حسین میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین، میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین، سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین، اس کی نسل میں غیرت رہے گی جس نے کہا یا حسین، میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین، سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین، میرے دل کی صدا یا حسین، سب کا ہو مرحبا یا حسین۔
پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
صلی اللہ علیہ ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیکم رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم امیر المومنین وابن سید الوسیین، السلام علیکم فاطمہ الزہراء سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیکم مولا ابن مولا، السلام علیکم غریب الغرباء، السلام علیکم سلطان ابو الحسن علی ابن موسیٰ الرضا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیکم صاحب الزمان، السلام علیکم خلیفۃ الرحمن، السلام علیکم شریک القرآن، السلام علیکم کعبۃ الایمان، السلام علیکم یا اہل بیت النبوہ جمیعا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، اللہم کن لولیک الحجۃ ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقاعدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا